Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Jeffrey Darty, the Christian Whistleblower, coming to you from the Nag Hammadi Scriptures. We are in the secret book of John, and we're talking about the Inexpressible One. And yesterday on our study, we saw that the gods of this world, who I call the Elohim because that's what they're called within the text of the Scriptures, the Bible, it seemed that they had a God, and as we move on into this next section called the Inexpressible One, it seems to be referring to that God. It says the One rules all. Nothing has authority over it. It is the God. It is Father of everything, Holy One, the indivisible One over everything. So it would seem that even the gods that created our heaven and earth have a God. They have a God that's called Father. They have a God that's referred to as Holy One. And he is invisible, not able to be seen, and he is over everything. And it's interesting how I can see people with a monotheistic viewpoint saying, the Holy One, the Father, the invisible One. And I could see people of an omonistic or a God is everywhere type of a situation saying, oh, God is everywhere all the time. And the Holy One, the Inexpressible One, and isn't that really, people ask me quite often, what do you call the divine? What do you call God? And I never really quite know what to say or how to respond because I never know quite what type of a tag or a label to put on the ultimate divine. But when you think about it, the Inexpressible One, that's a pretty doggone good name for a divinity that we really can't we can't comprehend, obviously, within our limited physicality, and we probably, even if we could comprehend, would not be able to express. So I might have to go ahead and just say, when people ask me, what do you call God? Oh, he is the Inexpressible One, or they are the Inexpressible One. The One is the invisible Spirit, or maybe even the One, right? It's not right to think of it as a God or like God. It is more than just God. Interesting. It's more than just God. And to us, in our mind frame now, there's nothing above God. I mean, God is all. But the secret book of John here is opening our minds up to say there's things that are more than just God. I mean, that whole concept of just God, what do you mean just God? That's like saying just $1 million. It's more than just God. Nothing's above it. Nothing rules it. And since everything exists within it, it does not exist within anything. Since it's not dependent on anything, it is eternal. And that is what I believe Source, God, the Inexpressible One, that's the place that he, that, she, that, they that created us, the Inexpressible Ones, or one that created us, is trying to get us to the place where we are not dependent on anything. And once we get to the place where we are not dependent on anything, we are eternal. And I think about, on a spiritual realm, religion seeks to keep us dependent upon something. Religion seeks to keep us dependent upon it. Religion wants you dependent upon its beliefs, its doctrines, its practices, its ways, its features, and its people, its divinity, it's divinity, it's deity. But true spirituality, as we draw nearer to the inexpressible one, we become not dependent on anything. And isn't that really the way that we should be in this world? And isn't learning to be that way in this world perhaps a step in our spiritual development? If we can learn not to be dependent upon anything, I mean, even think about it as our growth. When we're born, we're very dependent upon our parents. Some kids are still dependent upon their parents when they're, old. And once we get to the place where we're not dependent on anything, we can be approaching our ultimate state, which is to be eternal. And when you think about it, religions really offer their God as a crutch to you because they teach that you are crippled or that you need a crutch. True spirituality says you don't need anything, you just need to realize it and understand it. And when you do come to the place where you're not dependent upon anything, then you move into the place of eternity. And someone needs to hear this, and maybe many someone's. It's the same way in relationships. If you're dependent upon your spouse in a relationship, if you're dependent upon your spouse for meaning, for happiness, for completeness, the whole Tom Cruise, you complete me. Well, that's just a terrible way to look and to think and to be, because you have to be dependent upon nothing before you can have anything. And it's also the same way in a relationship. You have to be a full, complete person yourself before you can really be of any use to anybody else. So you need to look in the mirror and say, you complete me. Jeff, you complete me. I don't recommend you say, Jeff, you complete me. But the inexpressible one is absolutely perfect and so needs nothing. It's utterly perfect. It's light. And isn't that what we are striving for? To be absolutely complete and to need nothing. And that's what being perfect is. Being perfect is not being perfect as we think, but being perfect is being absolutely complete. Being perfect is needing nothing. Being perfect is being self-sufficient. Being perfect is being able to supply all of your own needs. When you are completely self-sufficient, when you can supply all your own needs, and really when you get to the place where you don't really need anything, you come to begin to approach the utterly perfect state, and you're just light. And it's interesting, it's kind of a play on words. Light, we think of light workers and moving towards the light and becoming light, but it's also light as in lack of things, not needing anything. And I'll tell you what, as I have divested my life of things, as I have become literally lighter as far as weights of possessions, I've become much more closer to the spiritual state that I want to be in. And as we move on, the one, the inexpressible one, is without boundaries. Nothing exists outside of it to border it. The one cannot be investigated. Nothing exists apart from it to investigate it. The one cannot be measured. Nothing exists eternal to it to measure it. And really, isn't this what we are going back towards, where we realize that we're all energetic entities and we're really fragments of this great one? And we see ourselves in bodies, but the reality of who we are is that we are one without boundaries. We are one with the one. And when we understand that, then we can begin to understand that there's really nothing outside of the one. There's nothing to border it. And this sounds so esoteric and so woo-woo and so, silly, la-la, love and light. But really, when you come to understand the inexpressible one, you just understand the inexpressible one. It's not, you almost cease to investigate and you just begin to know. And until you experience that, you really can't explain it. It's like me explaining to you what chocolate tastes like. I can explain it, but until you taste it, you really don't know. Or if I explain, how do I explain what sour is? How do I explain what sweet is? And the one cannot be seen, for no one can envision it. The one is eternal because it exists forever. The one is inconceivable, for no one can comprehend it. The one is indescribable, for no one can put any words to it. It's like I was just trying to say. How do you explain chocolate? How do you explain sweet? How do you explain sour? You can't. Those are things that can only be experienced. That's the way the inexpressible one is. Can't be seen, can't be explained, can't be described. Infinite light, purity, holiness, and stainless. And it's interesting how that refers back to what we talked about with the book of James. James saying that pure religion and undefiled is that which is not, it's pure and it's stainless. So the one is of infinite light. The one has no association with blood. One is incomprehensible, perfectly free from corruption. Blood is the essence of corruption. Flesh is the essence of corruption. So the one, the inexpressible one, doesn't want anything corrupt. It doesn't want sacrifices. It doesn't want blood. And this is powerful right here. The incomprehensible one is not perfect. The incomprehensible one is not blessed. The incomprehensible one is not divine, but it's superior to such concepts. Wow. It's not physical. It's not unphysical. It's not immense. It's not infinitesimal. It's impossible to specify in quantity or quality, for it is beyond knowledge. And I remember the Christ saying, you study the scriptures because in them you think you have eternal life. And he was speaking to the most devout of the religious class in Israel. And he was telling them, you guys are studying, you're trying to acquire knowledge because in that you think you have eternal life. But eternal life and spiritual wisdom does not come from knowledge, it comes from knowing. Grasshopper. True spirituality does not come from knowledge, it comes from simply knowing. And when you know what I'm talking about, then you know what I'm talking about. The one is not a being among other beings. It is vastly superior, but it is not superior. It is so great beyond what we can understand, but it does not have this essence and emanation and energetic expression of, I am something superior. It's vastly superior, so superior that it doesn't have to put on any airs of superiority. And isn't that the way the truly spiritual people are of this world? And here's where we really start getting into some interesting, more definable stuff. It's outside of the realms of being and time. And we understand and know, if you know anything about divinity, if you know anything about deity, if you know anything about that which we call God, they are outside the realms of time. They're not limited by time. They're not affected by time. And they could not be any less concerned than they are about time. Because whatever is within realms of being was created. So they're not even being, they're outside of being. And whatever is within time had time allotted to it. But the one is beyond all that. And the one receives nothing from anything. It simply apprehends itself in its own perfect light. And that, again, is where we need to be as people, as mates, and as spiritual beings, not needing anything from anything, but simply being within our own self, our own light. The one is majestic, the one is measureless majesty, chief of all realms, producing all realms, producing light, producing life, producing blessedness, light producing light, life producing life, blessedness producing blessedness, knowledge producing knowledge, good producing goodness, mercy producing mercy, generous producing generosity. And isn't that the way it really is in our life? My buddy Rex Bear says, be the change you want to be. If you want to be majestic, be majestic. If you want to be light, produce light. If you want to be life, produce life. If you want to be blessed, produce blessedness. If you want to have knowledge, produce knowledge. If you want to be good, produce goodness. If you want to receive mercy, produce mercy. If you want to be generous, produce generosity. All these things bring light beyond measure, beyond comprehension. What can I say, right? His realm is eternal, peaceful, silent, resting before everything. He is the head of every realm, sustaining each of them through goodness. And as the more I begin to meditate and the more proficient I get within the art of meditation, I understand that the true realm of spirituality, the true realm of growth, the true realm of ascension, the true realm of becoming is a peaceful, silent, resting realm. And the peace, the silence, and the rest must come before everything. And before everything comes peace, silence, and resting, sooner or later, we will surrender and realize that that is what must take place before we can obtain. That's some deep stuff. That is some deep stuff. Jeff, what do you call God? I call God the inexpressible one. Wow. The inexpressible one. Next time we'll look at the origin of reality. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, the Christian Whistleblower, bringing you the Nag Hammadi Scriptures, the secret book of John. And I encourage you to subscribe to this channel while you're here. I encourage you to share these videos, like these videos, and I encourage you to really take this to heart and apply it in your life, because if you start applying these lessons and these messages, you will unwind your mind and you will unindoctrinate yourself.